This is about improving your specifications with the help of AI. But first, some context. Why would we do spec-driven development? Well, we save a lot of time if we humans can provide a specification and then let AI generate the code and the tests that provide guardrails for future development and anything else that can be derived from the specifications. What to spec? Well, that I cannot tell you. You have to figure out the domain knowledge, what the customer's needs are that you need to meet, and what the solution is for that. You can get advice from AI there, but in essence, it's your job. So after you have figured that all out, it is your job to communicate that in the form of a spec. How to spec? Well, you have to recognize that you need a product spec, but also a process spec. The product spec provides at least the product vision and purpose. This is the context that makes the rest more understandable. And it's important to specify for your product also why you specify things as you do. The next thing is to look at domain entities. These are the things that play a role in your world, in your domain, in your application. And if you have a legacy application, you already have a database schema, and so you can see what entities play a role, like user role. Of course, you want to identify a user and a role, but you might also want to record who created this or changed it at what time. You cannot assume that AI knows about these. Assumptions are not part of speculative development. You have to make things explicit to some extent. Next thing is the user interface definition. I write a conceptual because you don't want to go all in detail. The spacing between elements, that's not of your concern. AI does that probably better than most of us. But what is important is what HTML inputs need to be on the page. So you may leave some choices to AI, and it could, for instance, choose to make a form with the 3-column layout. And then you may notice that an important field like the title is too short, not wide enough. And so you can then ask to make it as wide as the page, and it will do that for you. And then you can update the spec. But in principle, you only specify this on a conceptual level. The second also important part is the process. You have to have an ordered list of user stories, each with detailed acceptance criteria. You also have to say what AI needs to generate for each story. And it's not just generate a code or generate the tests. That is way too vague. You have to say what kind of test it needs to generate. You may also ask AI to give you ideas about alternative features that you didn't think about yourself. Well, how are you going to feed all this to AI? Well, it's one bit at a time, one story at a time. So the steps that I follow is I first clear the context, because if you do too much in one chat window, it runs out of space and it starts forgetting things. So just make it your procedure to always start with a clear context in your chat window. Then ask it to review the next story. You may think that it is all clear, but maybe not. It gives you very specific pain points. And then discuss each of those points and ask it for spec improvement advice. This is the essence of this video. I'll come back to this later. Then you let it run. And then, of course, you have to verify that you got your specification right. You might just have forgotten something. And if that's the case and it's a big thing, start over. Don't try to amend. Just roll back and start over. Now I'll give you two examples of how AI can help you improve the spec. Here I'm using Claude to help me get the specification right. I had asked it to review a story about the approval process of something, and it came up with 4 blocking issues and a couple of non-blocking ones. I addressed the third one here, so go to quickly there. You wrote, I say in my prompt, this thing here, and then I explain um, what it should be or how it works, namely that this review date is not just a daytime to indicate at what time the review happened, but also implicitly telling the system whether the review happened or not. Okay, so it was a bit confused about that. I explained it and then asked what changes should be made to the specifications and in what files to make this clear. And it thought a bit and then came up with 2 changes that it felt necessary. And one was the one that you said, see here, it wrote this or it rewrote this particular um, part so that it's now crystal clear. Here you can see a second instance of me talking to AI about a specific point it had made during a review. So this point 4 indicated that it didn't understand what I meant with sort order. This is an approval process and it has 2 kinds of steps. Some steps are made by individuals and some steps are to be made by a group of people in a role. And it clearly was confused about the sort order of people in a role. Apparently, it didn't understand what I meant with a role. And so I clarified that and I said anyone in the role can make the approval and then the step is done. So, okay, then I asked again what in the spec needs to be improved so that this is clear to anyone first time right. Okay, so it read it, understood it, proposed changes. Um, One thing to note is that it also made these changes. I never asked it to do so explicitly, but it did it, which is fine. I have Git, so I can always revert things. You have noticed that I define my own process, and I do this inside Visual Studio Code with Github Copilot and Claude Sonnet, and I think that's all you need. And why do I make that choice? Well, if you choose to use a third-party product, then you put your head in the noose of the provider of that product. And if they go out of business, or you want to get a better product, or whatever, you want to make a change, you cannot because all you have generated is dependent on that process that is out of your control. Why wouldn't I use a higher level kind of specification and a swarm of agents and then go into a lengthy discussion whenever something is wrong, amend, 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 and amend some more? Well, that's, I think, is a lot more expensive and it also takes a lot more time. And I prefer to be in control, know exactly what's happening, and find the shortest path.